Come on in, pull up a chair and relax because today I will be reviewing Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast. So, is this devilishly fun or should the creators be banished to the underworld? Find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer. Once again, back as your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. So today I am going to be reviewing the new release. It actually arrived in stores today. I held off doing my review of it. Unfortunately, I wanted to try to get my review out a couple of days ago. But if you do follow the Gaming Gang, you realize I've got a brand new camera, so everything looks different. Everything's a lot sharper. Yay. But it has been a learning experience for the DSLR camera, that is for sure. But I am going to review Descent into Avernus. And do want to point out, I want to thank the fine folks over at Wizards of the Coast because they did provide me with a review copy. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to tell you what I honestly think of this adventure. I just do want to point out that this review copy was provided to me. Sometimes I don't point that out, that when I'm doing reviews and that, those are review copies that are sent. I think people know. I just think from now on, I better, make sure that I point that out. So, as I mentioned, Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus is available today. It is 256 pages. It is hardcover, and it does carry an MSRP of $49.95. So, let's head on over to the other camera and let's start taking a look. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, role players of all ages, we do have Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Do want to send out a big thanks to the folks over at Wizards of the Coast for providing me with this review copy of their latest adventure book. Do want to mention that Descent into Avernus is, well, it deals with demons and devils. The player characters actually end up going into one of the levels of hell. So, on that note, I do want to mention that there is a bit more of a serious disclaimer by Wizards of the Coast for this adventure, pointing out, hey, you know what? This is just a work of fiction. Nobody, I mean, they don't necessarily say nobody here at Wizards of the Coast are devil worshippers or anything like that, but they do want to make sure that they point out that this is just a game, people. I was a role player back in the day when we had the Satanic Panic, and I gotta say, I had moved on from D&D at that point. I was playing Call of Cthulhu, which actually, probably worse. Should have been a bigger target, I guess, of the panic itself. But thankfully, where I lived in Chicago, and we didn't really run across very many people who were all freaked out about Dungeons and Dragons. So we didn't really have too many people give us a hard time. That said, I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there who, because of their own personal belief system, may not feel overly comfortable with a Dungeons and Dragons adventure supplement that is mainly focused on battling demons and devils. Granted, the player characters they hopefully are good guys and gals, but there are opportunities here for the player characters to be evil or to make less than savory decisions, or even possibly have to make a deal with a devil or demon. So essentially, the story begins. The player characters, I should say, are in Baldur's Gate, and the leader of the city watch has disappeared. And in the meantime, well, I should say at the same time, you're seeing that this other city, this nearby city where Baldur's Gate is kind of this hive of scum and villainy. Kind of makes Mogadishu look like Stockholm. It's a pretty low down, dirty place. Uh, but there's a nearby city which is kind of the exact opposite. It's like this blessed city which suddenly has disappeared and been dragged down into the depths. So not only do we have the town watch, their leader, who's evil. These guys are all evil. They're scumbags, but I guess they're just like lawful evil, right? They're not chaotic evil. They're evil, but they're not like super evil. But their leader has disappeared, who is nobility of Baldur's Gate. So that's going on. Plus, you've got all these refugees from this other city that are coming in as well. So the player characters are tasked with kind of investigating this weird cult. And that's how things kind of kick off. I'm going to try to stay as spoiler free as I possibly can as we go kind of page through this. I did a full page through in my preview, and I'm going to still page through everything. I'm just going to quickly kind of zip through here, share some of my thoughts about the adventure, what I like about it, some things that I think might need a clever dungeon master to kind of tweak, or at least I would personally tweak. One of the things I will point out in the earliest portion of the adventure, you're looking at a bit of a railroad, which is not unusual. You see railroads more in modern role-playing games, and a lot of people are like, oh, they can't stand, oh, it's a railroad, and a lot of people, especially those of us who enjoy the old school Renaissance or old school revival, whatever you want to call it, which I happen to. A lot of folks who are into that will sit there and they're like, oh yeah, it's a railroad, oh. But myself personally, having run Call of Cthulhu for decades, to effectively pull off a cool story, sometimes you gotta put the players on some rails for a bit, especially if it's a horror story. So the player characters end up, well, like I said, I'm gonna pretty much keep this as spoiler free as I possibly can. But what eventually happens is the players find themselves in the city that has been dragged down into the depths. Look at this artwork. I like the artwork throughout the book. I think the artwork is very nicely done in Descent to Avernus. Into Avernus, I should say. I like the artwork in this book more than I did Mad Mage. I thought Mad Mage was a little. It didn't. The artwork didn't have like a similar flavor throughout it. So the characters will have a lot of challenges once they're in hell. One of the aspects of the adventure that will probably be a bit of a challenge to the dungeon masters out there, and it is addressed in the book, is just how do you present this setting and the NPCs to the characters, because this is, you know, you're kind of using your memory bank, you're accessing your memory bank to bring up just about any kind of representation you've ever seen in a movie about hell. So I do really appreciate the work that went into kind of telling the dungeon master to make it where these NPCs, they're all kind of vying to be the demon or devil who's up on top, and they're willing to pretty much sacrifice and take advantage of and stab anybody else in the back in order to be noticed, to move up the ranks. I love this artwork of the Madcap. I really, really dig that, because it's pretty creepy there. So the player characters will also have the opportunity to meet with NPCs and find themselves with allies through this as well. So it's not a complete downer where it's everybody out against the player characters. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that some of these NPCs aren't using the player characters or attempting to use the player characters for their own devices, but it's not as if it's just the player characters versus everybody in hell. So, another aspect of the adventure that I like as it progresses, it starts off kind of on rails, which, as I mentioned, sometimes it's really what you got to do when you're, especially when you're putting together an entire campaign, essentially, in an adventure supplement. You got to get the characters in and involved. But one thing that I really did like about Descent into Avernus is the fact that towards the conclusion, the climax, the players will have a variety of different options, or things will play out differently depending how the players have approached the final big bad. And this could actually become a tale of redemption if the player characters go in that direction and play their cards in that way. It can turn into a bloodbath as well. It's all going to depend on how the player characters and the players themselves approach the adventure. So there is a lot of factions involved in the adventure, which I really like. I always love various different factions to pit not only against the players, but against each other as well. One aspect of the way I run role playing games is that I always try to make sure that the NPCs, no matter how relatively minor, have something going on, something driving them or inspiring them, what have you, that's going to have absolutely nothing to do with the player characters. I think that fleshes out the character, the NPCs much better. They make them much more realistic, more approachable as well. So uh, there are opportunities for the player characters to kind of take a breath, kind of take a break, where it's not a constant barrage of just miserableness. So the big bad is Zerial, who is actually a fallen angel. So once again, like I said, I don't want to give away a whole lot of spoilers here, but I mean, obviously enough. It's, that's her on the cover, right? So come on. I mean, I think anybody picking up the book knows that she's going to be involved in it. But essentially, what you're trying to do is maybe return something of hers that was lost. Um, Maybe try to make up for a betrayal of her, because like I said, she's a fallen angel. She's not necessarily a a demon or devil right off the bat, right? So the adventure clocks in at 156 pages. There's some aspects in the adventure that are they're kind of interesting. You've got these infernal machines, which we'll kind of get into here because now we're getting into some of the supplemental material. But I think it could have used some more rules, as far as, or at least a little more information about the infernal machines, and I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. But I thought that was a cool inclusion. The Blood Wars, the whole premise of it is pretty interesting. Do also want to mention that if you need more information about the devils and demons, you would be wanting to take a peek at Morton Canaan's Tome of Foes, because there's a lot of info about devils and demons and demonic lords and things like that in that supplement, which I really liked. I really did dig that. I liked it better than Xanathar's Guide to Everything, because Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which was fine. I mean, I thought that was well done as well, but that was just more okay. Here's like some rules and stuff. Here's different things that you can do, as far as more mechanically, where I'm a big fan of story and background and history and backstory and things like that. Now, I may not necessarily want all of it packed into an adventure supplement, uh, just because it doesn't make it very easy for a dungeon master to run a game when they have to go through 20 paragraphs of information about an area just to pull out, the specific things that you need to actually run that area when the players get there. But I really do dig just the background and the stories and figuring out how I'm going to use these motivations or how I'm going to role play the various major NPCs of an adventure. So we do get a Gazetteer for Baldur's Gate. This clocks in at around 50 pages. There is loads and loads of info in here. This makes for a great location to utilize in other adventures. So I was very happy to see all the info about Baldur's Gate. Like I said, I don't remember Baldur's Gate being such a dive, such a magnet for sleaze, and evil. But keeping in mind, there are still lawful good, lawful neutral, chaotic neutral NPCs who reside within the city. So, like I said, get a lot of cool info about Baldur's Gate. So, much more than I was expecting. Because the reality is, the player characters in the adventure are not in Baldur's Gate very long. They're essentially there for the first chapter of the tale. I mean, there's things going on. Like I said, they're going to be investigating this cult, and there's little dungeon delving going on there as well. So, but as I mentioned, look at this. This is all info about Baldur's Gate. So sweet. Really can utilize this in other adventures as well, especially if you wanted to lead up to Descent into Avernus, uh, as far as maybe doing some stuff with your beginning characters. Lots of goodies for you to dive right into, and create more than just a backdrop where the story begins, but actually really delve into Baldur's Gate. We also have some new origins, some backgrounds for characters as well. We get some kind of cool little adventure nuggets that you can bust out and utilize. Like I said, that you can actually use the backdrop of Baldur's Gate as more than just what's going on in this adventure as well. So then we get into the appendixes, and we've got the Diabolical Deals. As I mentioned before, some players may not dig the whole aspect of devils and demons being in this adventure. So there are, possibilities for you to make a deal with the devil or devils. But it's it's one of the aspects. It's one of the ways that you can actually win or resolve the adventure is by making deals with some of uh some other demons and devils who want to see Zerial just knocked off her throne. So we get the information about the Infernal War Machines. There's actually a splash further back here with the Infernal War Machines, and pretty cool. I do want to mention that the rules are not really extensive, so it's a pretty rules light approach to these. Like, basically, they're cars, but some of them are huge, almost like massive tanks. As you can see, it's only a few pages here, and most of it is actually taken up by the actual stat blocks for the various kinds of infernal machines. Ghost of Saltmarsh had a lot more info about sailing and ships and things like that, and of course, you would expect that, seeing that in most Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, the players are going to actually be sailing and on ships a whole lot more often than they would be driving these infernal machines. And we get some cool magic items as well. I am a big fan of magic items that actually do something as opposed to just being a +1, +3 versus black dragons. So we do have some cool magic items as well, as including the Sword of Zerial, which plays a big part in this adventure as well. So we had some of the creatures, some of the big bads that the player characters will run across, as well as some of the monsters, some of the new monsters available as well. Some of the cultists that they run into, stranger, like I guess more powerful cultists that they'll run into early in the adventure too, plus many of the various different creatures and monsters that they'll encounter along the plane of hell that they're on. There's a red cap that we already saw, the mad cap. You will need your dungeon master's guide, player's handbook, and of course monster manual, because there will be a lot of creatures that are included in this adventure that are not statted. You don't get stat blocks for, so it's important to keep in mind that you do need the triumvirate of core books for D&D in order to play Descent into Avernus. Then we get the Infernal Rapture menu. I won't spoil anything here. But I did mention that the players will have an opportunity to have a little bit of downtime, catch their breaths a little bit. You get some concept art too, which I'm not used to seeing these in the D&D books. So this was a nice surprise. I know some folks out there will be like, "Well, I would have rather seen 6 additional pages of adventure content," and I understand that, but I still thought this was pretty cool. There's those infernal machines again. And then we'll wrap up with a big poster map of Baldur's Gate, which I never take my poster maps outside of the book. And there you have Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. And what do I think about it? What are my overall thoughts? I'll tell you in a sec. So, what are my final thoughts on Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus? I have to say, it is one of my more favorite adventures for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Some of the earlier stuff that came out right when the 5th edition arrived, I wasn't too keen on. But as time has gone on, better adventures have come along. Now, saying that, I do have to point out that this subject matter is not going to be for everyone. There are some folks, I'm sure, who are out there who are going to say, "Oh, devils and demons? No. No, not with our belief system. We are not playing a game. Even though we're fighting the bad guys, we're not playing a game, fantasy game with that." And I can understand that. So I certainly can see their point. I don't think it's going to be a major issue with most gamers, though. I like the fact that you get a lot of information about Baldur's Gate, even though very little of the actual adventure supplement takes place in Baldur's Gate. There is that Gazetteer, which really fleshes it out. So you could conceivably use Baldur's Gate for other adventures. As I mentioned, I like it where maybe you kind of introduce those first level characters to each other in Baldur's Gate with a bit of a mini adventure before you kick off Descent into Avernus. That's a possibility as well. I do like the fact that the finale gives plenty of different resolutions that are possible. There are a lot of different ways of wrapping up the adventure, coming to the climax of the tale, and not all of them are good. That said, I do appreciate the fact, because a lot of modern games tend to, a lot of modern adventures tend to have everything lead to one end, like all roads lead to Rome as far as the finale of an adventure. This is not necessarily the case. There's a lot of different ways for the characters to resolve the adventure and hopefully make their way back home. There are a few things that I kind of have to ding a little bit. I have some quibbles about. First off, I wish the rules for the Infernal Machines were a little more fleshed out. they're not a huge part of the adventure, but they're kind of cool. And I would have liked to have seen more than about 6 pages devoted to them. Just a little extra, maybe another 4 pages, just to give me a little more crunch as far as that went. Not a huge deal. Also, I wish the adventure wasn't so railroady to start off with. And yes, I understand that if the players don't go to the plane of hell, they're basically not going to have an adventure. So I get that. I understand that. But especially the first 2 chapters do feel like a bit of a railroad. That said, that is kind of a modern role playing game motif these days, where back old school gamers would be like, railroad, no, it's all, everything is just this. The story is created as we play, as opposed to already having a big plot all laid out. But then again, that's pretty much any published material that you're going to buy. It's already plotted out for you, except for, hex crawls and random tables and things like that. The other aspect that I'm not too keen on, there are a few instances where the players have to pass skill checks, or it essentially boils down to, you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons tonight. I hate when I see that. I think that's pretty hackneyed. It's sort of like, when I run into those kind of things, I'm like, yeah, I'm tossing that out. It's like when I ran Call of Cthulhu for decades. The library use, spot hidden item, kind of threw those out, because once again, those were mechanics where it was like, well, if the players all miss their rolls, then there goes the adventure. And what was the point of getting together in the first place? I'm not one of these people who's real keen on a single roll of the dice determining if you're going to continue playing tonight or not. But that said, I really do like Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. I give it a very, very solid 9 out of 10. So, if the subject matter doesn't deter you, I certainly do recommend anybody out there who's looking for a little bit different adventure to definitely pick it up and give it a shot. All right, so that's it for today's show. As I like to point out, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now, you should know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Plus, don't forget to catch me Monday through Fridays live at 7 p.m. Central on YouTube with The Daily Dope and the latest tabletop gaming news. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you like the channel, please subscribe. And don't forget, if you do subscribe, ring that little bell, because not only will it inform you when a new video, say like this, gets uploaded, it'll also tell you when the live episodes of the Daily Dope stream begin. So, enjoy the rest of your night, and thanks for joining me. Until next time, happy trails! If you're ready for some more fun and you'd like to check out the latest episode of The Daily Dope, my live Monday through Friday show that airs at 7 p.m. Central right here on YouTube, click right here. And if you'd like to roll the dice and push your luck and see a randomly selected video from the channel, click right here. You pays your money, you takes your chances. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and thank you for watching.